Hello, I'm here today to discuss certain issues and concepts in quantum mechanics. So let us try to discuss certain concepts in quantum mechanics whereby we'll be able to understand what are the nuances of the subject, and thereby we shall be able to understand the latter developments of quantum mechanics. The understanding of Planck's problem of the blackbody distribution. What Planck was trying to do was to understand how radiation in blackbody is emitted and absorbed, and the so-called blackbody distribution spectrum comes about. There was Wien's displacement law, which was not able to explain the entire spectrum, and there was Rayleigh-Jean's law as well, which was not able to take into account the entire spectrum of the blackbody distribution. So as Planck was thinking about it, he suddenly realized that this experimental data can be understood if one assumes that the energy is absorbed and emitted by a black body not in continuum but as discrete quanta. Quantum is the singular and quanta is the plural. It means quantity. So if you assume that the energy is absorbed and is emitted in a black body in these discrete units called quanta rather than continuously as it happens in classical physics, then Planck realized you are able to solve the problem of the black body distribution spectrum, and this came to be called Planck's quantum theory. So according to Planck's quantum theory, energy is absorbed and is emitted in these units or packets which he called quanta. Then, using Planck's quantum theory, Einstein tried to explain photoelectric effect using the fact that light energy can be absorbed and emitted in terms of these packets, which later came to be called as photons. So these photons are the quantized units or the discrete energy units of light. So according to Einstein's theory, whenever light falls on a photosensitive material, it is absorbed in discrete units, and each such discrete unit we call a photon, and these photons which are absorbed by the free electrons in the photosensitive material get excited, and they share this energy in two ways. One part of the energy is utilized in overcoming the surface forces, and the other part of the energy is utilized in the kinetic energy, which gives the electron enough energy to come out of the metal surface. And as you know, the electron that comes out is called the photoelectron, and that is how you are able to register a current called the photocurrent. And this is explained by Einstein using Planck's quantum theory. No other classical theory is able to explain the photoelectric effect. Only Planck's theory, which was applied by Einstein, was able to explain photoelectric effect. Compton came later on, and he was able to explain the so-called Compton effect, wherein light is scattered and an electron that comes out has a higher energy, and the light that comes out always has a longer wavelength, because whenever light is interacting with this electron, it gives some amount of its energy in quanta, and because it loses energy, its wavelength increases. So this is called Compton effect. Even Compton effect cannot be explained classically using any other concept, so one has to go to quantum mechanics to find the answer for how quantum phenomena take place in nature. Of course, I have been very liberal in using the word quantum. I should have at the outset said that the domain of quantum theory and quantum mechanics is only in the microscopic domain. And this is because particles in the microscopic world are very small, and interactions that happen in the small scale are something that we cannot explain classically, because even the tiniest fluctuations in energy, even the smallest amount of energy that can disturb the system, will be very highly amplified in the microscopic systems. So this is why primarily quantum mechanical laws are valid precisely in the microscopic domain. As far as the macroscopic world is concerned, this does not bother as much, because the energy that we are talking about, the scale of the energy we are talking about rather, is very, very insignificant as far as classical laws are concerned. So this is one thing. Now, after Planck came up with all this, a young French theoretical physicist, Louis de Broglie, he asked this question. Now, if energy can behave like particles, why can't particles behave like energy or waves? This came to be called the wave-particle duality, and primarily de Broglie's argument is this: if you have a particle, could there be a corresponding wave nature to it? Because energy, that is light, which is a wave, if it can behave like a quantized particle, why can't the other way around be true? So this is called the de Broglie hypothesis, and he came up with his equation: lambda is inversely proportional to p, the momentum, and you take away the proportionality and add a constant, it is called the Planck's constant. So lambda equals h by p. So more is the momentum, lesser will be its wavelength, which means it will be showing its wave-like property lesser and lesser, and lesser is the momentum, higher is the wavelength, which means its wave-like property is enhanced. You are able to see its wave-like property much more significantly. It would be interesting to calculate what the wavelength of a moving car or a bus would be, and it would turn out to be a nonsensical answer, because physically it's a very insignificant number of the order of 10 to the power minus 35 or 36 or so in suitable units of meters or kilometers, whatever. So that means for an object which is in the macroscopic size, the dimension being so large, its wave-like properties are negligible. This is why you are not able to see the wave property of a bus or a car or ordinary matter in the macroscopic level. But you go down to the microscopic level and you substitute the relevant values, you will be able to appreciate the fact that for a particle like an electron or a proton, this wavelength is of the order of 10 to the power minus 9 or minus 10 meter, which is a very appreciable quantity, because that is a scale in which we are able to measure the wave-like properties. And this was in fact done by Davison and Germer independently, and G.P. Thomson as well did this experiment, and they were able to show that electrons can be diffracted, because diffraction, is a typical wave-like property. So this phenomenon is exhibited only by waves. So if an electron is showing a diffraction pattern, that means an electron is behaving like a wave. So you see, this is a contradiction in quantum mechanics. An electron, which is a particle which has a charge, which has mass, which has spin, etc., which is a very well known and a well defined particle, also has a wave-like property. It is showing diffraction, it also shows interference. This wave-particle duality is at the heart of quantum mechanics, and this is the only logical dilemma because of which we are not able to appreciate quantum mechanics and make sense of it completely. So sometimes it behaves like a wave, sometimes it behaves like a particle. What is it? Is it a particle? Is it a wave? Is it a matter of convenience? Well, this seeming paradox is something that we cannot reconcile in quantum mechanics. That's why very humorously Bragg said particles like Wednesdays, Saturdays and Tuesdays, and the other days it's like a wave, and on Sundays it behaves like neither. So the jocular vein apart, the fact is, in the microscopic world, particles can behave like waves, waves can behave like particles. So the seeming compartmentalization as to what a particle is and what a wave is lost in quantum mechanics. You cannot distinguish a particle and a wave, because both have properties of one another, and depending on the problem at hand, we treat it either as a particle or as a wave. Once you understand this concept, then perhaps everything else in quantum mechanics, at least as far as its conceptual development is concerned, comes out pretty much straightforward. So now that a particle is supposedly behaving like a wave, it is obvious and pertinent to ask, what is the corresponding wave equation? So for a particle, you have a particle-like equation, like a Newton's equations. So waves also have wave equations. So what is the corresponding wave equation for a particle which is behaving like a wave? And the answer, I guess, is already known. It is the well-known and the famous Schrödinger equation. So Schrödinger equation is the equation for a particle which behaves like a wave. It is characterized by the Greek symbol psi, which is called the wave function, and the wave function contains all the information one needs to know about that particular system. But then again, the wave function itself is a complex quantity. When I say complex, I mean mathematically complex, a real part plus an imaginary part. So because it's a complex quantity and we are not able to make any physical sense of it, what we do is we multiply it with its complex conjugate. So once you multiply the complex number with its complex conjugate, what you end up getting is a real number. So psi multiplied with its conjugate psi star, you end up getting modulus of psi squared, which is a real number. And this Born interprets as the probability or the probability density of a given particle, which simply means that the probability of finding a particle in that particular volume is modulus of psi squared, which is actually psi times psi star. So this is how you end up getting a real number. Observe that when you multiply this complex number psi with its complex conjugate psi star, you end up getting a real number. So it's a number, and that number indicates the probability of finding the particle in the vicinity of a particular region. This is called Born's interpretation of the wave function. Then you could go on and see, based on solutions of Schrödinger equations. The Schrödinger equation is a second order differential equation. You solve the differential equation based on the given boundary and initial conditions. So once you solve the Schrödinger equation, you get psi, which is a function of the position and time. Once you know psi, you multiply it with its complex conjugate psi star, you end up getting the probability of finding the system in that region. Once you know that, everything else is straightforward. So calculations in quantum mechanics, at least as far as wave mechanics of Schrödinger is concerned, is based on the fact that there is a Schrödinger equation, which is the wave equation for a particle which behaves like a wave. You solve the Schrödinger equation, and once you solve the Schrödinger equation, you end up obtaining psi, and this psi varies with x and t. So you have a particle, the particle is moving, and at every instant of time its position is changing. So this changing position and time for a given particle represents its wave function. So the wave function essentially represents the state of the system at that instant of time. So at the point x, at the time t, there is a wave function psi which tells you the state of that particular system. You multiply it with its complex conjugate, you end up getting the probability of finding that particle in this given region. Now this is characteristically different from what we do in classical mechanics, because in classical mechanics all our equations and laws are deterministic. Deterministic in the sense that if you know at this instant of time, at this position, what the quantity is, you could always say what it was some time ago, what it will be some time later. In this sense, classical laws are all deterministic. But you come down to quantum mechanics, as you have already observed, I have been using the word probability and probabilistic. And the reason is because a particle by its nature is well defined, whereas the corresponding wave, as far as the duality is concerned, is naturally having a spread. Now because a wave has a spread, it is not possible for us to pinpoint the location of a wave, because a wave has a spread. So I am sitting here and I am talking and you are able to listen to me. Suppose there is a person who is blind and he is sitting at one corner of the room, and I ask him, where am I? He is not able to pinpoint my location, because he is able to know that I am here by listening to my voice. He can't see me, and my voice, you know, is a wave, it's a sound wave. So he would rather say, you are everywhere in this room, because my voice is heard everywhere in this room. So he is not able to pinpoint my location because he is trying to understand my location from my voice, which is a wave. In the same way, because a particle in quantum mechanics has a wave-like nature and it is behaving like a wave, we are not able to pinpoint the location of a wave. So what we can do at best as a compromise is rather say that in this given region, what is the probability that you might find the particle here? So suppose you multiply psi with its psi star and end up getting something like 0.5, it simply means that there is a 50% chance or probability, likelihood of finding the particle in that particular region. Suppose some other region, your probability is 0.75, which means that there is a 75% chance of finding the particle in that particular region. So obviously this probability varies from 0, which means there is no probability whatsoever, and 1, which means 100% probability, which means it is absolutely there. So this probability varies between 0 and 1, and this is called normalization. To say that the probability of finding a particle in some region extends to 1 means that the particle is confined to that particular region and you are absolutely sure of finding the particle in this region. For example, I am sitting here in this room and you could ask, what is the probability of finding me inside this room? It is absolutely certain. So there is a 100% probability, that means you are very sure that I am inside this room. You could as well ask, okay, what is the probability of finding me in, let's say, this corner, my right hand corner of the room? Well, it's not 100% obviously, because I'm not there. So you would rather come to a number which is less than 1. But what you're absolutely sure about is that I am very much inside this room. That is called normalization. So normalization is the process of defining the parameters of length inside which the confines of a particle can be absolutely ascertained. So this is called normalization, and all this extends from the interpretation of the fact that a particle behaves like a wave. So I think we'll stop the session for now at this point. Thank you very much.